It's good afternoon, Cooper Chapman. Welcome to Yellow Shelf.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Cooper, you and I both have a network of familiar people, and I was recommended your podcast a long time ago, and it is finally good to get you on Yellow Shelf to talk about good humans.
Yeah, I'm great. It's like to be here. It's been quite the journey with Good Humans podcast. Been around since 2020, had over 190 different guests on the podcast from a range of different topics. But yeah, the real core theme is trying to help people improve their mental health.
Yeah, and it's if anyone takes a listen, which I'd highly recommend, it's really clear that this podcast for you, there's a purpose as well as there's this warmth. And I know it really comes across your curiosity, your interest, as well as your energy as a podcast host. So tell us about that journey. Tell us what we need to know about you and why you started the podcast.
Yeah, so I used to be a professional surfer. I traveled the world and surfed, quite close to the top. I was in the top 100 surfers in the world for about 10 years. And at the end of my career, my younger sister lost a few friends to suicide, which is quite heavy. And at the time, I was like, maybe I can help some people in my local community by running some school workshops, and went and started that and launched my business, A Good Human Factory. And when COVID hit, I was like, well, what else can I do to sort of fill my time? But most importantly, to educate myself around mental health, but in a different way. I really wanted to learn through people's experiences. I wanted to interview people and take them on a journey chronologically through their life. I have a very format that I follow every episode where I take people back to their childhood, through their high school years, ask them where they thought they were going to go, where they did go. And generally, they're somebody who has, something pretty important to share, whether, they're a top level athlete, they're an entrepreneur, they're a neuroscientist, they're a psychologist. Everyone kind of has the reason why they're on the podcast. But I like to get people's backstory. I think people can relate a lot more to somebody struggling at high school or coming from a single family household or, growing up in a environment that was very unique. So I think we can learn through people's stories. So that was the catalyst, just to basically educate myself on topics around well-being and things that people do to live a fulfilled life. And then be able to share that through the different avenues that I have with my mental health organization.
Yeah, and look, feel free to touch on that. I mean, I know I watch you on YouTube as well. So, I mean, there's plenty, not only can you listen, but you can also watch your YouTube channel. You have this mix of guests, and that's what I like. There are guests who, yeah, you know what, some people may have heard of. There's also guests that we may not have heard of, but you introduce them, you facilitate the journey of their stories. It's often very beautiful.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, like you said, I interviewed just people who have gone through really difficult moments and show like beautiful resilience from, I had a girl from England who was part of my social media community, but reached out saying the work that I did really helped her. I called her on Zoom and she was in a hospital bed and she was diagnosed with a terminal illness, but has this beautiful story of her journey and how she stayed optimistic. Her name's Georgia Carmichael. I've had Sam Corlett on the podcast, who's the lead actor in Territory and Vikings and another new show on Netflix, He Ain't Heavy. And just hearing his journey is so special. And then I've had like F1 driver Jack Doohan on my podcast. I've had people like Hugh Van Cuylenberg, kind of thought leaders in the mental health space in the country. I've had NFL players, I've had NASA scientists. I really go to every corner because obviously the underlying theme is mental health and it's something that we all have. So I feel like there's no harm in really listening to everybody's journeys and just pulling what you think might work for you at that time in your life from their story.
Yeah, and isn't it interesting? We all can connect with stories of reality stars or Formula One drivers. There's always going to be that small connection where it can just resonate for us. You're absolutely right. So, Cooper, tell us about the best way to connect with you. If we're curious about the podcast, if we're curious to connect with you, I'll put all this in the show notes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, the best place to check out the podcast is either Spotify or Apple. If you listen on listening in platforms, you can just type in "Good Humans" with Cooper Chapman, and it should come up. Also, I'm trying to get the YouTube going so people have that visual as well to be able to really connect with people's stories. I think when you see it, it can connect a little bit deeper. So you can find us on YouTube. Just search the Good Human Factory. And then for sort of obviously shorter clips to see just little highlights, you can follow myself on Instagram at Cooper Chapman or at Good Humans Pod on Instagram. Or if you're a TikToker, if it doesn't get deleted here in
Yeah.
Australia as well, it's just Cooper Chapman underscore. So whole different places. If you want the full
Yeah.
episodes, you can obviously go to the podcast platforms. If you want video, go to YouTube. And if you just want some shorter stuff, just check out our social media.
Yeah, awesome. I'll put that in the show notes to make it super easy. Thank you so much for joining us. Keep those guests coming. Yeah, I'm one of those visual people. I love to listen and watch. So I'm definitely a subscriber on YouTube. Thank you, Cooper. All the best.
Thank you so much for having me.
Cheers.